What's up, everyone? It's Father Grush again. It's great to be back with you to give you another pilgrimage update. I'm sorry I haven't been able to provide as many updates for you in the last couple days. It's mostly just a timing issue. A lot of times we're leaving the hotel really super early, and then we do all of our touring really quick, and then we crash. And it's usually pretty late by the time we're getting back. Usually we're pretty wiped out. Last night I had all of the intentions of making a video, and I was just too worn out from all of this. There's a lot to catch you up on over the past couple days, so let's get into it. So in my last video, we were talking a lot about the different sites along the Sea of Galilee, places where Jesus had done most of his public ministry. Cursi, where he drove out the demons from the demoniac into the swine. Tabor, where he did the multiplication of the loaves. The Mount of the Beatitudes. Capernaum, his sort of home base. So he did all of those great things, but now it was time to move on to something different. So we moved on to the city of Nazareth, which is where Jesus grew up, or at least we would have, except there was a biking marathon that was going around the Sea of Galilee, and it delayed us by several hours, and we didn't leave until noon. But I guess we got to sleep in. But of course, after the race was over, we were on our way and headed south to the city of Nazareth. So Nazareth is an ancient city, but it was much smaller in Jesus' time than it is today. Today, it's a bustling, big city, and it's full of action. So it took a while to get through it because of all the traffic. The original root for the word Nazareth actually comes from the Hebrew word netzer. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, which means branch. I think as Christians, we look back on this and we see that it maybe refers to this, is Isaiah 11, chapter 1, which says, "A branch shall sprout from the stump of Jesse, and from his roots a bud shall blossom." It's something that we're going to hear a little bit in not too long from now, as we are getting ready for Christmas during the season of Advent. Now, of course, we know that as we look back on this passage, the branch that stemmed from that stump of Jesse is Jesus himself, that new branch that emerged, that gave new life to that tree. And it was in Nazareth where that branch first took root. At the heart of the city of Nazareth now is the Basilica of the Annunciation. It's an incredible building, and it is such a powerful reminder of an incredible event as well. The huge church that is there at the Basilica of the Annunciation has a huge spire that towers into the air. It actually is designed to kind of look like a lighthouse, which is interesting, right? It reminds us that Jesus is the light of the world, and it was there at Nazareth that news was first made known by the angel Gabriel to Mary. The Basilica of the Annunciation is actually built in 2 levels. The top level is a lot more of a modern church. It is beautiful artwork that depicts the universality of the church, the fact that no matter where you go in the world, that you will find the Church of God somewhere, and that there are a lot of pieces that look the same. And of course, we remember that when Jesus entrusted Mary to the church, as he entrusted Mary to John at the crucifixion, that in the same way, all of us have her as our common mother. This fits really well with the courtyard that is just outside the basilica. Along the length of the walls of the courtyard, there are different depictions of Mary as the Mother of God, each coming from a different nation in its own artwork, in its own style. It is a really cool experience to see. Countries from Wales to Spain to Uruguay to Singapore, and of course, even a little one by the USA. I hate to say it, ours is kind of ugly. So that's the upper level, but the lower level, which is just beneath it, is actually built over the ruins of an ancient church, which in turn is built over the ruins of a household, a cave. This is known as the Grotto of the Annunciation, and it was there that the angel Gabriel appeared to Mary in her home. Now, you might think it's a little weird to have a cave in your home. Not too many of us have caves in our homes these days, but it actually makes sense when you think about where Mary grew up. It's not a dark or creepy cave, but in the sense that the house had a sort of underground area, which was a good way of escaping the heat of the day. Within the grotto, there is an altar that's built over the place where the the angel Gabriel would have revealed himself to Mary. And on that altar, there's an inscription that says, Verbum, Caro, Factum est, which means, here the Word was made flesh. Very cool. So then we finished up our day by heading out to Mount Carmel, which is along the Mediterranean Sea. If you remember from the Old Testament, Elijah goes and he challenges the prophets of the evil god Baal to a contest. So what they do is that they have this contest of whose sacrifice on their altar will be burned first. That's how they made the sacrifices, was by burning them. But they couldn't light the fire themselves. They had to call down fire from heaven to take the sacrifice. And so the prophets of Baal are dancing around their altar and they're cutting themselves and they're shouting things and yelling these different things, and nothing is happening. And meanwhile, Elijah is making like funny quips like, oh, well, maybe your God is just on vacation, right? Or maybe he's taking a nap and you need to wake him up. But then finally, he prays and he calls down fire from heaven, and it's immediately consumed in an incredibly dramatic way. Well, the evil Queen Jezebel did not appreciate that, and so she sent people after the prophet Elijah to go and arrest him and to kill him. And so it was on Mount Carmel that Elijah took refuge from the evil Queen Jezebel, and where he prayed, asking for a sign to move forward. And so there's a cave on the mountain where reportedly Elijah hid himself during that time. A group of religious brothers then founded a community dedicated to Mary under the title of Our Lady of Mount Carmel. And it was there on that site where they founded their monastery for the first time. We had the really cool opportunity to celebrate Mass in the monastery that those monks founded. Then we finished up the day with a good dinner and we headed to bed pretty late. And I was pretty exhausted and couldn't make a video for you, so sorry. The next morning I woke up a little bit early so I could take in one last peaceful morning on the Sea of Galilee. And it was really beautiful. Actually, the place where we were staying was called the Magdala Retreat Center. But the reason they named it that way was because when they were trying to found the retreat center and they were digging for the foundations, they came across ruins. They found that they were digging on the site of an ancient synagogue that marked it as being from Magdala, the home of Mary Magdalene. It's kind of weird, right? You try to build a retreat center, you know, end up discovering an ancient city, like you do. This retreat center was amazing. It was beautiful. It had a great restaurant, and the chapel was really interesting. The altar was shaped like a boat, and it had the Sea of Galilee in the background. So it almost looked like you would have been there in the boat with Jesus praying. Well, as we got on the road, first things first, we headed south to Mount Tabor. We actually were supposed to go this earlier in the week, but we weren't able to do it because of the timing. Mount Tabor is actually a high mountain that's in the middle of a flat plain. And this plain was actually the battlefield for so many groups throughout the centuries. The Egyptians, the Greeks, the Romans, the Crusaders, and it actually even has a special name. It's the Plains of Megiddo. That may sound familiar to you because the word for Megiddo actually makes up that word Armageddon. And so Armageddon is actually the name for that final battle between good and evil, which a lot of people believe will happen there. But Mount Tabor is not just a battlefield, it's a place where Jesus took his disciples up the mountain and was transfigured before them. You probably remember this episode from the scriptures, but what happens is that as Jesus is transfigured, his clothes turn white and he becomes dazzling in appearance, and Elijah and Moses are there with him. They're representative of the law and the prophets. And Peter freaks out. He doesn't know what to do, and so he says, Lord, let's build some tents here. One for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah. The cool thing about the Church of the Transfiguration is it's actually built in a similar way. It has three sort of towers or tents that make up the church. And underneath those towers are chapels to Moses, Elijah, and of course in the center, Jesus. It was an incredible day. So after we were able to see the basilica, we went out and we were looking across the incredible view to see what we could see. We then hopped back into those rickety little buses that we came up in and took them down the mountain again, back to our main bus where we headed to Cana of Galilee. Cana is the place where Jesus performed his first public miracle at the wedding feast at Cana. And so we were able to bless the weddings, the marriages of some of the pilgrims there by renewing their wedding vows. After that, we drove a pretty long way to the Jordan River. Now, there are a number of different chapels that are built along the stretch of the Jordan River, which kind of runs in and out all over the place in that area. But the tradition has it that there's a particular section which is actually the border between Jordan, the country Jordan, and Israel. And it's a section of the Jordan River by the Judean desert. Up until recently, that area has been covered with landmines. So it's now cleared of landmines, thanks be to God. And now soldiers guard both sides of the Jordan River to keep anybody from crossing from one country to the other. The area is also famous for date trees. Apparently they have really good dates down that way, but that also means that there are nasty flies everywhere, which you can imagine made our Mass just a little bit difficult. But when we finished with Mass, we were able to renew our baptismal promises, and some of us even collected some water from the Jordan River to take home with us. We then finished up the day by heading to the Dead Sea, which is probably something that many people have heard about. This isn't a biblical site, but you had to imagine that Jesus would have gone past it several times, had seen it several times, maybe even took a bath in it a couple times. It's a sea that's called the Dead Sea for a reason. It's extremely salty, and salt actually makes up 1/3 of all of the water that's there. Because of that, there are no animals, there are no plants, it's pretty dead. People go swimming in the Dead Sea now, but when you go into the water, the high amount of salt actually keeps you from sinking. It's like laying on a cushion. People then took some mud and they rubbed it on themselves. It's supposed to make your skin super clean. It's not really my thing. So we hopped back in the bus and we drove to the city of Jerusalem, which is where I am right now. Stay tuned for some more updates. I hope to give you guys a lot more updates, but things are going to be coming hard and fast, and it's going to be hard to fit it all in there. Like, comment, and subscribe. Ask me any questions if you have them about what the stuff is that we're seeing, what you would like to know about some of these things, and I'll try to answer them when I can. Peace. God bless you all.